This tutorial expands on the concepts discussed in our previous video, Permission System Basics. In this tutorial, we will examine permission types, including Boolean, integer, and power permissions. This tutorial is the first in a series of advanced tutorials regarding TeamSpeak 3's powerful new permission system. As you learn to master these topics, we will be applying our knowledge through various examples and actual use case scenarios. If you're following along, be sure to pause this video as often as needed. This tutorial was recorded in high definition and is best viewed at 720p. To switch to high def, click on the 360p pull-up menu on the lower right area of the YouTube video control bar. Okay, let's get started. Alright, so we are currently logged in as Alpha and we are a member of the server admin server group. And in our last tutorial, we had just added our friends Epsilon and Theta to the normal server group. Reviewing what we have already learned, let's demote Theta back down to being only a member of the guest server group. We'll do this by right-clicking on Theta, selecting Set Server Groups, and then unchecking the Normal checkbox. I'm going to close this window, and at the bottom you can see that the server has logged that Theta was removed from the server group Normal by Alpha. So now we can see that Theta is a member of the guest server group, and if I select Epsilon, he's a member of the Normal server group, and Alpha is a member of the server admin server group. Okay, so now let's take a more in-depth look at permission types and permission powers, and then we'll apply what we've learned to several examples. Okay, let's go to Permissions and Server Groups, and let's drill down to Virtual Server and Settings. And notice at the bottom that we are currently showing permissions by their descriptions. So I'm going to switch to Show Names, and this will reveal the internal name of the permission, which incidentally is the same as the variable name or property used in server query commands. Now, there are several permission types you need to be aware of. The first permission type I'm going to talk about is a Boolean permission. This permission can only be set to true or false, and always begins with a B underscore. So, let's make use of the filter box for a moment, and if I type B underscore, you'll be able to see all Boolean permissions within all of the permission categories. And as I scroll down, you can see that there are a lot of Boolean permissions. So let's go back now. We'll collapse global, information, and administration subcategories. And let's focus our attention now on the B virtual server modify name permission. If the value of this permission is set to true, which in this case it is, then that means the server group selected on the left can modify the name of the virtual server we're connected to, which is basically done like this. I'm going to close this window, right-click on the Greek squad, select Edit Virtual Server, and as you can see, we can edit the server name here. So I'll cancel, and let's go back to Permissions, Server Groups, expand Virtual Server, go back to Settings. Okay, now let's talk about integer permissions. As the name suggests, this type of permission accepts only integers as values and always begins with an I underscore. So in the filter box, let's type I underscore channel, and we're going to focus on the I channel max depth permission. This permission defines the depth of subchannel structures which you can create within a top-level channel. For instance, if we set this value to 0, you can only create top-level channels or root-level channels. If you set it to 1, you can create subchannels within the top-level channels. If you set it to 2, you can create subchannels within the subchannels, and so on. Here we see that the value is currently set to 10. which means that we can create up to 10 subchannel structures within any top-level channel. To illustrate this, let's change the value of the permission by double-clicking on the number 10 and typing 1, then enter. Now, on the main client window, I'm going to right-click on Channel C and select Create Subchannel. I'll type sub1 for the name and click OK. And now you can see that we've just created a subchannel under Channel C. If I right-click on sub1 and choose Create Subchannel again, I'm going to name this sub2 and click OK. And now you'll see that we get insufficient client permissions on the bottom here because our max depth is set to 1. Let's try this one more time and set max depth to 2. And now if I right-click on sub1 and create a subchannel, I'm going to call this sub2 again, click OK, and as you can see, we no longer get the error message. However, if we were to try to create sub3, again, right-click on subchannel, let's try sub3. The server will not allow us to do this. Note that the max depth permission refers to the horizontal depth of subchannels and does not affect the total number of subchannels you're allowed to create under any given channel. Also note that some integer permissions can have a special value of -1, which in the case of max depth means that there's no limit to the number of subchannel structures you can create. Okay, now I'm going to double-click on Lobby. And if you recall from one of our previous tutorials, the subchannels we were just working with have disappeared because they were created as temporary channels instead of permanent channels. Last but not least, let's talk about power and needed power permissions. In the filter box, I'm going to enter kick. And this pair of permissions define how users are allowed to kick or be kicked off the server. As you can see, power and needed power permissions always come in pairs. When dealing with power permissions in general, you can only successfully issue the action the permission controls if your power is equal or greater than the needed power of the target user. To clarify this a little further, let's click on the guest server group on the left. And notice that the iClient kick power is grayed out, which means members of this group do not have kick power at all, and therefore cannot kick anybody. However, also note guest users have a needed kick power of 25. This means that if you want to kick a guest user, you simply need to have a kick power of 25 or greater. If I select the normal group, you can see that this group also does not have the power to kick anyone. But notice that to kick a user in this group requires a kick power of 50 or greater. And finally, if I select the server admin group, you can see members of this group have a kick power of 75 and a needed kick power of 75. This means server admins can kick anyone on the server, including other server admins. Alright, so now let's apply what we've learned to a real use case scenario. Let's suppose I want to have a co-admin server group which helps moderate or kick unwanted guests off the server. First, I'll need to rename the normal server group by selecting it, then choosing Rename at the bottom. I'll type co-admin and hit enter. And next, I'll right-click on the iClient kick power permission and select Add Permission. For the value, I'll enter 40 because I want co-admins to only have the ability to kick guests and not other co-admins. So to summarize, guests cannot kick anyone, co-admins can kick guests and no one else, and server admins can kick all users because their kick power has the highest value. To go one step further, suppose we're looking at Epsilon's computer screen. Currently, we're logged in as Epsilon, and if I left-click on Theta, you can see he's a member of the guest server group. Epsilon is a member of co-admins, and Alpha is a server admin. So if I right-click on Theta and select Kick Client from Server, I can enter a reason such as cursing not allowed, then click OK, and the server will report at the bottom that Theta has been kicked by Epsilon. However, if I try to do the same with Alpha, the server reports that I do not have sufficient permission to kick this user. This concludes this video tutorial. Thanks for watching.